Welcome back to the Rebuilt Parish podcast. Today, I cannot wait for you to learn from Father Paul MacNeil from a parish in Ontario, Canada, St. Alexander the Great. Wait until you hear his story. He and his parish, by focusing on stewardship, and when I say stewardship, teaching his parish to give as an act of worship, his parish more than doubled their weekly income in less than 2 years. This is an incredible success story, and you're going to learn so much from him. He's going to talk about some of his favorite Rebuilt resources. He's going to share how he actually met two saints in real life too, which is a fun story. And you're going to get to learn just how he did some of these. Also, take a peek at the show notes today because we've got a great free resource for you to help you when it comes to stewardship and finance in your parish. See you inside the episode. Well, hey there, Father Paul. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's great to be here, Melissa. I'm looking forward to our time together today.
Well, I am too, and I have to tell you, I was going to start by asking you a little bit about your parish, but you and I were chatting beforehand, and I think you need to share with everyone the story of how you came to be a priest. Do you mind sharing that with everyone?
Oh, I'd love to share it. It's one of my favorite kind of stories about my life that is a little on the bizarre side, to be perfectly honest with you, but what happened was I'd been in the seminary for about 4 years in London, Ontario. I'm Canadian. I'm from Niagara Falls. I'm just outside Niagara Falls, Ontario. And I left the seminary for about 6 or 7 years, I think 7 years. And but I wanted the adventure, so I found myself in Calcutta, in India, Kolkata, and at the time it was 1992, and Mother Teresa was working there. So naturally, I volunteered with her organization, and I would see her occasionally, at night prayer and evening prayers, and then somebody came up to me one day and said to me, "Hey, Mother wants to see you. Mother Teresa wants to see you." I said, "Are you kidding me? Like, what?
Amazing.
I mean, it was because it wasn't anything super religious that I was there. I'd kind of, in fact, I didn't want to go into it, but I kind of had a lot of doubts about my faith at that time after being in the seminary for so long. Anyway, so she sat down with me, and just she and I, and we talked about 20 minutes. And, and I'm getting more and more nervous as I'm talking to her. But she said to me, "When are you going into the seminary?" And I said, "Are you kidding me?" And I said, "No, I'm not going to seminary." I was already there for 4 years. I hated it. There's no way, And you know what she did? She looked me in the eye and she said, "A vocation is a beautiful gift from God." She said, "Don't throw it away." And, and I'm thinking to myself, well, she's a nun. Of course she's going to say that,
Right.
But somebody told me that she's actually told guys to get out of the seminary. So I thought maybe.
Wow.
And here I am, right? Now I didn't go back in the seminary right away immediately. Like I taught English in South Korea for a couple of years, and I just saw the world. Was in Belgium for a year. Studied philosophy in Belgium at the University of Louvain, which is one with nothing to do with religion or church at all. Although being a priest, people see that in my background. They say, "Oh, they must have sent you to study." No, actually, they never did.
Wow.
That was different. Yeah, it was. But anyway, I finally decided to go back into seminary, and that was 25 years ago. 1999, I got ordained. This year, actually, 25 years.
Congratulations. That's amazing. And how many people can say they became a priest because Mother Teresa said, "When are you going to seminary?" That's incredible.
When I was at her ordination, her canonization, and that was freaky. Like that was like, okay, wow, actually having met this woman, and
right.
I got to tell you. Can I tell you one more little story? We got to get to.
Please, yes, tell us.
I was actually, when I was in Calcutta, I still call it Calcutta. I know that's not the right name, but Kolkata. I met a girl there, and we started dating. Actually, she was from Belgium. That's how I ended up in Belgium studying.
Whoa.
She's at a little university here. Why don't you come here? And it's like Louvain, like one of the oldest Catholic universities in the world, and a good one. But it was really amazing because her uncle was a professor at the Belgian College in Rome. They were doing some kind of big anniversary, 250 years or something like that. And he invited me, and we had an audience with Pope John Paul II. Now,
wow.
When I met Mother Teresa, I had a little Imitation of Christ book with me. I'm not even sure why I had it. It was given to me by a monk at one point. And I had just bought a little fountain pen from the little store because they're only $4 as opposed to 200 here. And and she took the pen out of my hand and she signed the book. Like,
Wow.
yeah, I know. I didn't even ask her. She took it. And so I had that book with me. And when we had this audience with John Paul II, also a saint, he came by and he blessed that little book. And I have a picture of it.
Wow.
Yeah, another saint, right? Another saint, two saints.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You've met two saints in your life. That is incredible.
I know, it was just very, and of course, what he did was I was with all these Belgians, right? And he passed me, and he said, "Where are you from?" I said, "From Canada." And he went to go on. He gave me a rosary. He went to go on. He came back. He said, "What are you doing here?" I said, really, I'm looking for Tim Hortons. I don't know, just got lost. I just saw a bunch of people going in. I decided to join up. But no, it was, and he said it was one of his favorite countries. And
Wow.
he gave me another rosary, told me to give that to my mom.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, and I got pictures of all. I was much skinnier. And
Weren't we all?
I know. So, but anyway, so now that's all in between the seminaries. I went back to Christ the King in East Aurora, New York, and got ordained, and never looked. I had good years and bad years, but I never really looked back.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think it's so important. I love when priests share their journeys. And my pastor actually just shared his journey to the priesthood in front of our entire parish. And the beautiful thing is, everybody's story is so different. I have heard more stories where, I kind of pushed off seminary. I tried to do something else and thought maybe that was my calling. And I think it's so important for people to hear that there are so many different ways to get into the priesthood. And it's not just, when you graduate, you're going to immediately go to seminary and then become a priest. Not everybody's journey looks like that.
I think all of us, the feeling for me, and I'll share this, it's also relevant for our conversation about the finances in a kind of a loose way, but the feeling of being lost, I think, is what I felt when I was in South Korea, and talking to older people who, I remember one guy, he was like a war correspondent for National Geographic or something like that, but and I thought to myself, wow, man, this guy's living the life I want to live, right? And I had this conversation with him, and he said, no, I just filled with regret. I don't have a family. I don't have any, I didn't commit to anything in my life, and I feel lost. And I was suddenly thinking, well, I don't want to be that person anymore, right? I want to have commitment. I want to give myself to something valuable, worthwhile. And that's when the idea of the priesthood started to come back, And I just talked to somebody just the other day, bless her heart. She came to me. She actually found us online, through our website, things like that. And she was big into New Age and that kind of thing, and like very big into it. And she said, this is not, and what she sat down and started to pray the rosary. And she said, I just felt this peace. I just felt like I had to come home. So she looked us up online, and so here's the thing about it. She said, well, I have a little spot on my website where you can actually book an appointment with me.
Wow.
Super easy. So she did that and booked. I sat down and chatted with her, and we had a wonderful conversation, because I think that that's getting back to the whole rebuilt philosophy of reaching the lost, right? That's what we're really trying to do. And I've been there, and so are a lot of people. I would say everybody.
Yes.
And coming back to the faith, coming back to who Jesus is. It doesn't make an awful lot of sense sometimes. I get that, but there's something about it that just keeps drawing you back.
Right.
And you feel at home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, goodness, thank you for sharing all of that. And I think it's time to start diving into the meat right here. So we're here to talk about finance and stewardship, and your parish has an incredible story, and I can't wait for you to share it with everyone. So the first thing I want to ask is, talk to us about your financial situation and your parish when you first got there, and tell a little bit of that backstory.
I will. And I think the first thing to say about it is I've only been here for a couple of years. I'm just coming into my third year. I signed on for the rebuilt coaching right away. And I kind of had to be talked into it a little bit, because it's a risky thing. Being a new pastor, is this something that I want to start right away? But I decided to do it, and I just want to say just a little plug. It's been wonderful, and I'm continuing with the coaching for the third year, and it's been really great. I came
Love
from a
that.
very large parish in Niagara Falls, Our Lady of the Scapular Parish, a wonderful parish. We survived COVID. It's like a little blip there, from the Avengers. Like, oh, like what happened? We don't even think of it sometimes, but it was a nightmare. But the bishop was a little bit concerned about the parish I'm in right now, St. Alexander, and he said, the pastor who's here, he's been here for a long time, or almost about 10 years. He's retiring this year, and it's a new building, and it's in a very high growth area. And I just need to get somebody in there a little bit with a little bit of energy that can really work with it. And it was a hard decision because I love being at Our Lady of the Scapular, and I know that there was work to do there, and I could have brought the Rebuilt program into that church too. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to go here, kind of start fresh, right? So that's what I did. Now, Father, the pastor who was previously here, a wonderful pastor, very dedicated. He was from Eastern Europe. He was from Poland originally. And his main goal, his main mission, and he threw all of his energy into it, was to pay down the debt. And he did that. And he did that by cutting a lot of the excess. So he put a real dent into the mortgage. So when I got here, it was about $710,000 that we still owed.
Wow.
Yeah. The problem was COVID hit this church very hard. People, as all of us, and I think what happens is the volunteers. They're not coming out as much, and the attendance was way down, and the collection was way down. We were averaging the collection about $3,000 a week. It's interesting because talking to a lot of my colleagues in the States, their collection seems to be way higher than that sometimes. But we were really, really struggling. So that's what I kind of came here with, just sort of not specifically to worry about the debt or the finances, but to try to bring people back. And I want to say this too at the start. 25 years of priesthood. I've been a pastor since about 2004. I've actually never until now have ever talked about money to a congregation.
Whoa.
Never. It's just the oddest thing. I've never had financial difficulty. It's always been a case where just building up the kingdom of God, but the people by serving them as best I can, by being available to them, try not to burn out myself. But that was my whole strategy, and let the money take care of itself. It's going to kind of do that. And I looking back, I'm not sure that was ever enough, but you have a different approach with Rebuilt. So, Melissa, can I just share one more little thing about Rebuilt for a second?
Yes, please.
Okay, because I just want to tell you that I had looked at Rebuilt probably when it was first published, the Rebuilt book from Tom and Father Michael. When I first looked at that, I got through about maybe a couple of pages in when he starts talking about his encounter with Saddleback Church down in Southern California. And I thought to myself, well, in high school, I used to go to the Baptist church all the time, so I know about these evangelical stuff, so I'm not even going to bother reading it anymore. I put it down, right? But then the springtime, before I even knew I was going to be moving, one of my parishioners had said to me that they were late for Easter Mass. And they said that they had actually gone out for a little drive, beautiful countryside in the spring around here with the blossoms and everything. But they got stuck in a traffic jam, like out in the middle of nowhere. It was like York Road, like who would have thought? And they were lined up because they built a new evangelical church. And so they I don't know if they popped in or they looked at their website, and they just came back to me and said, we got to do this. And I'm thinking, yeah. So I got Rick Warren's book on a purpose-driven church. I soaked that up, and I thought to myself, is there like a Catholic version of this? And I remembered Rebuilt. So I looked at that book and I just devoured it. And so I was all in by that point. And then when the bishop said, well, maybe you need to go to this new church, I thought, well, you know what? I can start fresh here, right? I can really do that. So that's what I wanted, a little bit of a backstory about that. And yes, I haven't looked back in terms of my involvement with the coaching and the courses that we're taking. And we're doing the small groups course right now, which is great. So
we're having fun together in that one. So let's talk a little bit then about what resources you dove into to kind of help guide you on this path. So you mentioned the book You mentioned coaching. What were some of those other resources that helped you get ready to start working on this stewardship journey?
Well, honestly, the real trigger for me in terms of the financial side of it was Church Money. That's a book written also by Father Michael and Tom too, I think. Right.
Yes.
And I read that, devoured that as well. Also encountering some of that in Rebuild, the Rebuild book. And also there was more of a practical book written as well. I forget what it's called. It was a bit of a
Tools for Rebuilding.
Yes, I read that too.
Yes.
And I just loved it. But and then I took the stewardship, the financial course when I had a chance to do it. That Rebuilt Church Money book was extremely helpful because it actually introduces a very different approach, as you guys all know, like to finances, which is very different. And I thought, okay, maybe I need to pay a lot more attention to the financing. I remember one time reading a part of it, and it said, it's not fun to be in a church where there's financial difficulty. And
right.
I was in that. Our collection was very low. We were paying $5,400 a month on the mortgage, and I can't do anything like that. I was like trapped, because
right.
all the stuff that I want to do for Rebuilt, and I couldn't really do it. And so that was sort of the starting point. And reading that material gave me a really good foundation in which, okay, let's just try and move this forward as best I can.
So good. Now talk to us. What were some of those first steps you started to take after reading Church Money and being a part of that finance and stewardship course?
Well, I think the first thing that I did was, maybe this was even slightly before Church Money. I had some really good people on my finance council. And one fella said, in running a business, you have two choices. You can either build the organization or you can pay down the debt. You can't do both.
Right.
And so he suggested, why don't you go to the diocese and ask them to renegotiate that? Well, the loan's with the diocese, not a bank. So that was my very first step to do that. And I want to say that was very difficult because it took, we got it. What we got the loan renegotiated for the $600,000 that we owed at that point out to 25 years, which made our monthly payments a lot lower. Plus I was able to get a line of credit for $100,000 to do some things that we asked for $300,000, but we only got 100. But that was probably one of the most significant things that we did because it allowed us more elbow room to do some, a little bit of bridge financing, I suppose. The interesting thing about that was I'm not sure that the diocese has read Church Money.
Right.
So I think they were still operating out of an older fundraising model. Right. And we were trying to move away from that. And I remember somebody from a church saying that they were having trouble paying their heat. And so what they did was they put an envelope on their bulletin every week that said heat, and feedback I got from the parishioners that I knew, people were angry about that.
Right.
For two reasons. First of all, with the collection's not that bad. You should be able to pay for your heat.
Right.
It looked like mismanagement. But the other thing, they just resented being asked for this all the time. And I went one time going into a church and saying, we're being nickeled and dined because every time they walk through the front doors, there's some organizations, Church Money even said it, selling muffins for something. And they said, and we're tired of it. Right. And I think that that's absolutely right. And at that point, I knew that my approach was going to be much more positive, much more. We give because we're disciples, and it's joy, right? It's look at all the wonderful things that are happening here. You're part of this, and it feels good. And even just from a financial stewardship point of view in your own personal life, giving is good. That's where we want to come from, right?
Now, how did you introduce this idea of stewardship over just giving from a point of need for the parish? How did you introduce it to your parishioners, I should say?
Still working on it. We took November last year for the first time. It was 2023, and we did a whole stewardship campaign for that entire month of November, leading up to a kind of a stewardship campaign day. I forget what we called it. So that whole month was preaching on those 4 P's, right? Plan, priority, percentage. I have it written down here, progressive. And I kind of took one of those topics. And at that last, I said, I'm just warning you guys. I said, well, I'm going to be talking about money for the whole month, but I'm not going to be talking about it a lot for the rest of the year necessarily, unless it comes up in Scripture. But this is where we're going to focus on this. And so that's how I kind of rolled it out to the parish. And it was neutrally received. I mean, it was fine. Nobody objected to it. The other thing interesting, we did do, based on the financial course, we did do that pledge form.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that this episode is about online giving, and I just got to say we're behind on that. Like we're really, we did get a significant amount of people do online giving for us, but it's the old-fashioned way. I guess you could say old-fashioned with e-transfers and things like that, which is, not as simple as it could be. But people did respond to that. We got 200 of those pledge forms back. All they could do on the pledge form was say they're going to do it. Right? There's no direct link yet, and that's how we kind of rolled it out. But at the same time, when the decisions were coming up, I have a great parish planning team that works together every week. We tried to say, well, no, we're going to stop charging for stuff, right? Yes. So First Communion, there's no charge. So it's really easy that way. But that's something that just over time, just have to continually, even now, still continually, share that philosophy. But that's when it started. It started with that stewardship month.
It's so good. So you had a stewardship campaign. You took a whole month. You first prepped your audience for it. You let them know, hey, I am going to talk about this every week for an entire month. So get ready. But I'm only going to talk about it otherwise when it comes up in the lectionary. And then everything else is going to be free. So we're not nickel and dimed. So I love that. So then if I'm right, you then took a week to talk about each of the 4 Ps, right? The plan, priority, percentage, and progressive. Mm-hmm. And then what happened?
Well, I honestly, not much that you'd notice, except I have to say in the last year, the collection has almost doubled. So it's definitely.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely doubled.
You're being humble here. You're being humble. Tell us.
Yeah, just so you know. They absolutely did. But also, I find, it was remarkable, the kind of response that we got from the congregation in general. But I still feel like I'm not sure if people yet understand what we're doing. It's only early. And I'm just thinking, I can't wait to see what's going to happen here once people begin to really understand this. I can give you an example. One of your questions, I think, was that we talked about earlier was about some of the issues and problems with it. But during that month, I had hired a number of, now that we've got a little bit of money to work with, I hired a number of some part-time staff, including a musician. And I remember having coffee after, we have coffee after all the masses, no charge. But somebody said to me, the diocese pays for that, right? They pay their wages. Are you kidding? No. Right. You paid any attention to what I've said, the whole time. It's you guys that are doing it. You love the beautiful music here. Well, that's because of the collection, right?
Right.
But so it was still a matter of trying to communicate that, Yeah. And so I still say that we have a ways to go with it, but definitely very happy with that initial response. It's been incredible.
So I think it's critical to highlight here that you were at about $3,000 a week in collections.
Yeah.
And when we were chatting about this yesterday, I think you told me you're now averaging over $7,000 a week for collections. So you've more than doubled your weekly income by changing the way you're talking about money in the parish and changing that culture. And I think this is a huge inspiration for parishes everywhere, knowing that you don't have to be a big parish to make this happen. That you can do this by just taking these simple steps that you learned from church money and from this finance course and apply them. And you really start to touch the hearts of those in the pews.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now, as we work on this discipleship and teaching people to give as an act of worship, yesterday when you and I were chatting, you told me about someone who made a big gift and how that made him feel. Can you share that story with us?
Oh, I would absolutely love to. There's a connection here also as a kind of a prelude to that story about prayer. One of the things that I had done in the parish was I do this at every parish that I've been into, but every church has the tabernacle with the Blessed Sacrament in it, and in our, a lot of our churches, that tabernacle, because of some of the revisions from Vatican II, which I support, by the way, the principle of it, but they moved the tabernacle to the side a little bit so that the focus can be on the altar. I think that was the reason behind it. Well, over time, the problem with that is what I did was I moved the tabernacle without even asking anybody. I just moved it to the center of the church and moved my chair from the center to a little bit to the side. And it just puts Christ at the center again, I think.
Yes.
And people may agree or disagree about that, but certainly the parish loved it. I did that in my previous parish, and there were people that actually were crying, because it was in that case it was in a separate building, right? It wasn't even in the main church. However, the week I did that, my musician, who's a beautiful singer, came forward and actually offered to sing with us, and she's incredible. She's a producer and a writer, and just a beautiful voice. And then somebody came to me and said to me, I heard you were thinking about upgrading your sound system and putting your screens up, and I said, yeah, we are actually. Well, he said, here's $10,000, and just wrote a check for it. And so but at that point I stopped him, and I said, okay, we got to talk about this, a little bit,
right?
Because this is while we were standing there having coffee, and this is the coffee social after mass,
Yeah.
And so he brought his family in and him, and we talked about it a little bit, and I asked him why are you doing this, and he said, I have been blessed my whole life. Everything seems to have worked out perfectly for me, and I know that it's God's grace, and I just want to give back to that.
Amazing.
And he said, I believe in what you're doing here, and I think the TV screens are going to be great. And so he gave us that check, and then we actually put the screens up, pretty much right away. That was one of the first things we did very quickly. It's like that's not low hanging fruit at all, but
right.
It's a win, right?
Right. That's huge.
Yeah, and it was a sign from God, I think, that we're on the right path.
Yes,
it was his, but the way he did it and why he did it, I think that really touched me, and it does. It feels good. And if we can tap into that, that sense of gratitude or whatever it is, yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to encourage that with everybody that I meet about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now that's a story about someone who was touched by what you were sharing in your homilies, felt called to give as an act of worship. But we also know that when you start talking about money, sometimes there's resistance. What sort of resistance, if any, did you feel in your parish? And maybe what did some of your parishioners have to say?
Well, in this particular case, interestingly enough, I like I said, in my priesthood, this is the first time I'd ever actually really made money a focus of any kind of. Usually, I don't say anything about it, and money just comes in, believing that if I just am there for people, do my job as a priest, that God will support it. But I have watched other pastors, and I remember one pastor, when I was first ordained, was masterful with finances, sold a large piece of property, and with that money from that, he did all the carpeting in the parish and I think he did the heating as well. And he got up and he announced to the pulpit that, guess what, we're going to do the new carpet, we're going to renovate, and because we sold this piece of property, it's not going to cost anything. And the feedback, I saw a message on the voicemail that said, Father was always talking about money. Well, yeah, but he's telling you don't need to give anything for this. Like, it was just the weirdest thing. So even just mentioning the word, just freaks people out. However, in this particular case, I would say honestly, nothing. No, nothing. And the only thing wasn't resistance at all. Sometimes people question why I'm putting TVs up, or some people that were very loyal to the previous pastor are scratching their heads saying, man, this guy's spending a lot of money, right? So I got a little bit of that, but it wasn't outright hostility, or it was just, I hope he knows what he's doing. And I think there's a reason for that, because I think that when I got there, I think people recognized that the parish was really hurting financially.
Right.
Like, how are we paying this? How are we doing this? So the only issue that I did see, though, was just a lack of awareness of the importance of money in churches. Mm-hmm. And that's exemplified by the example I shared with you about the guy, really good guy, obviously, and just did not know that no, that we have to pay for this, and
Mhm.
it costs a lot of money, you know, to
Right.
the diocese doesn't pay. We pay the diocese, and the more money,
Right.
the more we got to pay. By the way, we're looking at our budget, and say, wait, why do we pay that much to the diocese? Because our collection is so much bigger; it's double.
Right.
But I also started taking some of the high capacity givers out to lunch, right, just to thank them, show them what we're doing. That was one of the things that came up in the course. And the interesting thing about those visits, I haven't done an awful lot of them, but they don't recognize that what they're giving means anything.
Interesting.
Yeah, they kind of said, I didn't really pay it. I just put the check in the thing. You know, I didn't. Why are you honoring me with this? I'm just doing it. Yeah, but it's important what you're doing. You know, we can't function
Yeah.
without it, and we're grateful for it, right? You know,
Wow.
and that was interesting. So there's still learning that has to happen in terms of financing. What is it they say? Funding the mission.
Yes.
Funding the mission. I think only 2 years in, like we're still a little bit of that that consumer church that they talked about a little bit. I think we're
Yes.
still there. We're just not quite. But I feel like it's changing. More leaders are coming forward. More ideas are coming forward. You know. One of the things I will say, though, that was difficult and still is, and I don't get it right all the time, is that, you know, with the diocese, we have, I think, 9 or 10 special collections, and we have to do them. So I know church money talks about passing the basket around only once, right?
Mhm.
But I had somebody from another parish that wanted to do a fundraiser for building their new church for their Sarah Malon-Carr, right? And I allowed that over 2 weekends. The Catholic Women's League wants to sell for their budgeting. They want to sell fruit baskets at Christmas or something like that. Like I've said no to most of that, but not all of
Mhm.
it. And every time I allow it, I say, yeah, you know, it's you don't want to be not to participate in the community. I've
Mhm.
got one right now, for example. They're going to build a hospice center in Welland, which is a city just south of me, and they want to come to the church and do an appeal, you know. And I think church monies, I think it's fairly clear that for the collection for the money, like be careful with that.
Right.
It's hard, but at the same time, you know, one of the things that's happened here, which I really like, is that we're very involved with the community here. We open the church up, we open the parking lot up to public events. There's a concert here every Thursday in the summer. We say, yeah, use our parking lot, no problem, no charge.
Wow.
We want people to know that you can come here, and we have a great ecumenical group. We do a concert in the park series with the parks right near the church, and I just threw this out there almost over my shoulder. Yeah, if it rains, you can come into our church because we're right there. And it rained. the
Oh,
first
wow.
yeah, I know. And that was, but that kind of. So how do you maintain a positive footprint in the community? How do you maintain a positive relationship? Because that's where reaching out is going to come from.
Right.
To develop a good reputation, like St. Alexander's is doing great things for us as a town. At the same time, hold back on a lot of the fundraising because the fundraisers will look at a church and say, "Wow, there's a lot of people there. Yeah, we can really dig into the pockets, right?" But anyway, that's been a bit of a challenge, and that's on us.
So, in light of all of that, what would you say you're still working on for going forward? So, in this next round, stewardship season is coming back up.
Yeah.
So, what's that next step for you?
Well, we're going to do another stewardship campaign in November. I was going to do a series of homilies just on discipleship on steps. We decided not to do that, just to again focus once again on the finances. I think, though, what we're going to do this time around is be more careful with our budgeting. Our budget starts in January. My idea, working with our planning team and our leadership, is we're better organized this year than we've been in terms of what's happening in the church. So what we're going to do is I have a mind map which says St. Alexander's in the center, and then all these branches off. We've got discipleship, we've got the weekend experience, we've got operations, and I want to put a dollar value on each of those in terms of budgeting, so people can have a really clear idea of what it costs to run it. Something like that, because I think that now I know that church money wasn't necessarily all that big in terms of financial reporting. And I agree with some of that. It's hard. You see a lot of numbers on there, and it's pretty easy to dig into that and say, well, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? I want to communicate well about the finances, but to say, and the other thing too, I want to say is really important, is for us not to try to reach people out of need.
Yes.
I can say, yeah, I'm not going to say, look, we're running a confirmation program and it's going to cost, a couple $1,000s. We need somebody to give for that. Not really.
Right.
We might do something like Champions, where I can have those conversations with the high capacity givers and say, hey, by the way, we if you want to give something to this, you can. But that's not the way we're going to do it. I want people to know that it's the collection that's allowing us to do it.
Yes.
Right? It's the giving on Sunday that's allowing us to do these amazing things. And without that, it wouldn't happen. So thank you. Right. So it's a very positive message, not out of need,
What I love about this mind map that you're talking about is that's part of how you can show transparency for how the church now is being good stewards of what they have given as an act of worship. So it's just showing that, hey, when you see that we're spending this many thousands of dollars on this next generation program, this is so that we can make disciples with the next generation. When you see that we're spending this much money on small groups, this is helping all of you grow deeper in your faith. So it helps to connect those dots for them. And it's being transparent, which is so important when it comes to parish finances.
Well, that's good for me too. I mean, we hired somebody to do our communications and marketing. We're revamping our website. It's still a work in progress, very much. But when somebody comes to you, like I mentioned, I forget it was this conversation where we had before, but somebody came to me and they just wanted to start coming back to church because they'd been away from the church and they just prayed the rosary and just felt at home and at peace. And she found us online, right?
Right.
And it was, so that means that, okay, the money we're spending in trying to work on our online presence is working, and working beautifully. And so it has to be, it's all part of the growing wider, making disciples, growing deeper, really change. I've often said in my homilies, when I do something, I said, we're doing this because I have a very profoundly positive experience of Jesus in my life. And I feel like he's a friend. I feel like he's walking with me. I feel like when I pray to him, he answers those prayers. It brings me tremendous joy and peace. And I want that for everybody, right? I want people to know what we know when we feel this. And however we do that and to share that, it's not just me doing it, it's everybody feels that. And that's kind of contagious, right? So, yeah, that's the message. And that's finances has to be part of that.
Yes.
We're doing that. We're raising givers so that they can give and they can experience Christ and share that with the community, right?
Absolutely. Well, I've got to ask you, what rebuilt resources would you recommend to those parish leaders out there who are maybe stuck and struggling and saying, oh my gosh, Father Paul, you more than doubled your giving and here I am trying to balance all these fundraisers. What resources would you say, go try this?
Well, I have to say, read the book, read Church Money, and get at the philosophy of it. I think that's probably the most important thing. As far as anything else, practically speaking, I would say really try to get out of that fundraising model. We don't even use the word anymore, and raising givers instead. I think that's really crucial. And you don't have to have any resources to do that. Just maybe that's where my experience with finances comes in from before.
Right.
Really, just being a good, faithful priest is probably the starting point to that. And for those who are serving in ministry, to serve well. And it's like St. Teresa Little Flower, today is her feast. I mean, everything you do it with great love.
Yes.
That's a powerful message. And it's beyond, it's a feel, it's a flavor, that would be, in terms of resources, church money is probably, as well as the course that I took on stewardship was great, very practical.
Yes.
And not to walk alone, right?
Absolutely. Well, Father Paul, here's the good news. So you got to take the finance and stewardship course with our subject matter expert, Ed Bradley, and you got to take that live with him. Well, we have good news for those who aren't in coaching or who aren't in coaching yet, is that now anybody can take that course on demand. We now have a finance and stewardship course on demand, and I'm going to put the link in the show notes for everybody. But this way, if you want to learn those steps from the way that Father Paul learned about them, we highly recommend this course. I've been in it. I've watched the videos. I actually created the slides, so I know the content. It is good, and it is just what you would get in the live course, but you get that you can go at it at your own pace, which is really nice. So, Father Paul, any additional thoughts or words of wisdom you want to share with us before we wrap up today?
I think to give yourself, give of yourself, and I think the other thing too is prayer. I think is really important, and honestly, I think that my strategy from the years before of just sort of letting the finances take care of itself, it happened to work for me, but I think that to be intentional about it and linking it to discipleship, that path of discipleship, keeping it very positive, giving because it feels good to give and you're contributing to an organization that you love, I think is really important and not to be underestimated. And if there's a warning I could give, don't staple an envelope to the back of the bulletin with feeding on it.
Absolutely.
Anyway, other people may swear by that, but I'm just saying that's where I'm coming from. So
it's a much different result when you raise givers rather than just raise funds. Something magic happens. It's so special, and I think that, I mean, we can't say it enough. Ask them to give as an act of worship versus giving out of need, because people respond to vision. But when you're asking out of need, it exhausts them.
Yeah.
So thank you, Father Paul. It's so much fun to get to work with you. It's so fun hearing your story of your own spiritual journey, but then your parish's journey as well. So thank you for pouring into our parish leaders today and for inspiring them so that they can learn how to raise givers in their own parish.
Well, you're very welcome. It's been a real joy working with you as well. I'm enjoying the small groups course, and it's good news about the financial stewardship course being available, because I think that's really worth it. So thank you.
I agree. Well, thank you. Thank you to our community. We will see you next time.
God bless.